Good morning, everybody. So glad to have you along. Gosh, it's been a whole week, hasn't it, since a wonderful thing happened to this country, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. I've got something wonderful to tell you about, and a person who wrote about it. It's a tough subject, really, that so many of us have to deal with, and that topic is saying goodbye to a loved animal, particularly a dog. And I have in the studio, I have two people. I've got Dr. Hal Kitchings. He's a minister, he's an author, and he's an MC grad because he grew up in Clinton. And he now is practicing in Brookhaven. And I have his publisher, Joe Lee, whose name will be very familiar to you. He's editor-in-chief of Dogwood Press and Sunrise Press, which publishes this beautiful little book. And if you have seen my Twitter page, you need to see it's called Doggone It Hurts. And it's I haven't read it yet, but I mean, we'll all be in tears, okay? Because there's so many dog lovers, and everybody knows I'm crazy for dogs, and I do cry a lot over dogs. But welcome, Dr. Hitchings. But you want me to call you Hal?
You just call me Hal. That'll be fine, Mary. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Joe. Good to have you. I don't think you've ever been on the show. I've had your authors, I think, but...
Yeah, first time, and it's good to be with you, Mary.
Well, good. Well, I want to talk about this because, gosh, this is a hard thing, and you're right, it hurts. And we want to help people, and I've done it, I've had to do it, and it's heartbreaking because, here's the thing I want to tell you. Years ago, there was a woman named Elizabeth Marshall Thomas who wrote a book called The Hidden Life of Dogs, and a lot of you might remember that. And in an interview, somebody said to her, "Do you think dogs have souls?" And she said, "Well, of course they do. What would heaven be like without our dogs?" Like, that settles it. And when really, from a religious point of view, God has made them such, and the word dog is God backwards, as you know. I mean, he made such beautiful creatures. How could they not? I mean, they're not all angels, but what the heck? People aren't either. But do you believe the dogs have souls?
Yeah, here's what I would tell you. One of my favorite, I quote several people in the book, and I do take I share stories about having dogs. I share about Tim Tebow's book that he wrote for children about he's got like 3 dogs in his house, and I share a quote by Billy Graham. And so the way I would answer that, Mary, is Billy Graham said, "God will prepare everything for our perfect happiness in heaven, and if it takes my dog being there, I believe he'll be there." So I think that's a great way to answer that question.
Yes.
I know that humans have souls, and I know that God is sovereign, and he knows what's best. So I tend to agree with him. If they're supposed to be there to help us with that, they'll be there.
Yeah,
but I trust him with that.
Just look at their eyes. Well, you're a dogger. I mean, you've had dogs all your lives, right?
Yes. Yeah, I had 3 growing up. We had Chihuahuas. My mother was the big dog person. Grew up in Kosciuszko. My dad was at First Baptist Kosciuszko as a pastor, and we lived in a pastorium. So I don't ever remember a time without dogs.
Well, there you go.
Growing up. So, yes.
Well, Mr. Editor-in-Chief, how did you two get together, and are you a dog person by any chance?
We are cat people, but a really neat thing about this book is that while it is targeted toward dog lovers, Mary, anybody who loves a pet can get the same kind of goodness and comfort from it. And one of the things that spoke to me, and I was introduced to Hal by a fellow author, a guy named Nash Nunnery, who wrote a very good football book called Magnolia Gridiron Cathedrals in 2023. But he said, "You'll really enjoy Hal." And one of the things about Hal's writing that comes off is it's like we're visiting right here. It's like you're having a conversation with him. It is so relatable, and there's relevant scripture. And the quotes, Billy Graham, Tim Tebow, Sir Rudyard Kipling, all kinds of stuff that melds together to make the landing after losing a pet as comfortable as could be possible under the circumstances.
It is an act of love. If it's one thing if the dog dies naturally, but if you have to put the dog down, it is the final act of love. And we can't do that for our people. We don't have to ask our animals to suffer. Well, we can do for them what we don't do for people. And I'm sorry I'm getting teary-eyed over the whole thing, but that's okay, folks. If you want to cry on the air, that's okay, too. You can call us at 888-808-8637. You can text us at 601-879-4395, and you can watch us at supertalk.fm/Mary. So if you're looking if somebody misses it, it'll be on that website for a few days.
Right. Well, Mary, you're in good company as far as those tears. Of course, Jesus wept, but I was sharing with you earlier, Kirk Herbstreit, who is on ESPN, lost his dog this past week or so because of cancer. So this past Saturday, you've got this former football player, quarterback for Ohio State, that had tears because he was talking through the grief of losing his Ben, his dog, that was often on the set.
So, folks, do you talk about ways to, you have to tell me, ways to deal with, some people say, well, I'll never have another dog, or I'll wait a year before I get a dog, or, not unlike me, I mean, gosh, this girl, Bert and I had to put down our first Jack Russell in 2012. She was 14 years old, and she was very bad with heart trouble all of a sudden. And so, but I had found a breeder to go and look at another dog right away. And but I'll tell you, it was really right away. So we left her at the vet and had her cremated, by the way. This is a nice thing to do, by the way, for your dog. Do you talk about that at all? You can cremate. If you put him in the yard, you don't know that you're going to live there all the time, but Right. But so we went to see this puppy, and Bert said, "Well, we should bring her home now." I said, "What? I mean, we just said goodbye." And he said, "But you, because he left the training to me. He goes, you only have 2 days to work with the dog before you have to go back to work on Monday." And he just fell in love with this little tan and white Jack Russell Terrier. We brought her home, and I was like in the twilight zone, because the last time I sat in a car with a dog, I was taking my Heidi off to be, put down. And then here I've got this little puppy, like, who are you? Don't even know her name or anything. Like, what,
Right.
And so that was weird. I mean, same day is very strange. Usually maybe a day and a half.
Right.
But same day was strange. But a lot of people, do you talk about that?
We do. What I did is I provided like a 30-day, and I couch it in the beginning, in the introduction, about biblically how oftentimes God worked through 30 days. So this is a 30-day devotional walking through grief of a dog. Now, somebody can just read it like a book, but I definitely deal with grief, how to work through it. When do you get another dog? Do you get another dog? I talk about ways to memorialize those that choose to do that in order to create a memory. The picture on the front, the painting on the front, was a way for my older sister, who went to MC, majored in art. She painted that years ago for my middle sister, who lost her poodle named Candy. And so it was a way for Karen, my other sister, to remember her dog. So yes,
that's really that's great. Well, so Joe, have you ever done any book like this at all before? Any animal book before?
No, this is the first one, and it spoke to me for all the reasons we're talking about here. A beloved pet is part of the family, and all of us, and all of us have friends who've gone through the loss of beloved pets, and there's a little bit of everything about when and how to replace the pet. I think we all have friends who didn't replace a pet, or didn't for several months, and then Mary, like you were talking about with Bert, later in the same day. And we've lost two cats over the years that we had for 14, 15 years. And my wife was like, let's wait a little while. And I said, whenever you're ready, but if you left it to me, this morning. And later in the day, she texted me. She said, I've been in touch with somebody on Facebook, and there's somebody about 20 miles from here who has a litter of kittens, and I'm going to get one. And I said, excellent.
And did she? She brought it.
Oh, yeah. And there we are. But the biggest thing I would take away from Hal's book in regard to when and how you replace a pet, it'll all come in God's time. That's what it comes down to.
Exactly.
And you and I and Hal, Mary, everybody will know when the right time is, and it's going to be different for everybody.
Well, I've got here's a comment from a listener who says, I love my childhood dog, Marcy, let me read it, Marty, so much that I have never been able to get another. So I opened a dog grooming boarding daycare business so I can get all the puppy love. And he opened it in Gluckstadt, by the way, because this is the same guy who texted us that he opened a pet grooming place in Gluckstadt. So isn't that something? And wow, that's a good way to deal with it.
Well, absolutely. So when we were in St. Pete, Florida for about 8.5 years, my wife and I, there was a period of time where we were in between houses. We lived in a condo, kind of a condo complex, apartment complex, and so we didn't have a dog, Mary, and there was a lady upstairs that would come down and walk her bulldog. I cannot tell you her name, but her dog's name was Franklin.
Oh, wow.
And I was so glad to see Franklin because we'd visit, and he seemed to know who I was.
Oh, sure.
And so, yeah, I miss Franklin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's like I had a horse for a long time, and we knew with those of us who kept our horses there, we knew the names of the horses. We didn't know the names of the people, but that's it's getting your priorities together.
That's right.
I want to tell people that where they can find out the book, they can go and see what you got kicking off at MC this afternoon. Jolie, you want to tell her, or Hal, whichever of you tell it at 4 o'clock this afternoon at the Alumni Hall at MC. What are you going to do? Kicking off a tour?
Yeah, the tour got started over the weekend in Brookhaven, where Hal lives. Dog Ear Books and Wild Fox Coffee on Saturday, and then where Hal is the pastor at East Haven Baptist Church in Brookhaven. That was Sunday. So we are really busy this week. MC this afternoon.
Well, because he went to MC, so that and grew up in Clinton. So I mean, this
there we hope for a big crowd. And then Lemuria Books of Jackson is Thursday afternoon at 5 o'clock, reading about 5:30.
Good for you.
And my gosh, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but Attala County in North Mississippi is later this month, and Memphis at Novel Bookstore, that's coming. Late month as well. I think November 25th.
Wow! So Hal's got he's got the schedule.
Memphis.
Memphis is when?
Yeah, the 25th.
25th.
That's right. It'll be at 6 o'clock at Novel Bookstore, and the one in Kosciuszko, where I grew up before moving to Clinton, is the 23rd. And that will be at Sullivan's Pharmacy and Gift Shop at 10:30 that morning.
Have you kind of taken a sabbatical from church to do this tour? I mean, really? Do you have an assistant pastor there? Or?
Well, we have a very supportive staff. We have an assistant, Kenny Goza, that helps with the day-to-day, and others on staff. But our leadership has been very supportive.
Well, yeah.
And so I'm very grateful. And it really is a ministry and an extension of the church. So they've been very supportive, and of course it's just for a short season as far as all the things that come together for several weeks.
How long did it take you to write this book?
I would say it was about this particular book about 9 months.
You've written others,
yes,
that we don't know about, but yeah.
Right.
How many other books have you written?
I've written 2 other books.
Oh, okay.
And
were they not about animals?
No,
about people and not souls. And
yeah, no, Mary. What I did is, so it's kind of to me, it's like a calling. Like I'm a pastor, that's my calling, and I've written a few books. So it's not like I'm an author that pastors. It's something that I sensed God was calling me to do with all 3 of the books. And this was something when I moved back to Mississippi that I'd been thinking about. And I just started making notes and praying about it, talked to a few people, talked to my wife, Kelly, and I thought, if I'm back in my home state, I want to find a publisher here in Mississippi. And so that's when I found out about Joe, Nash Nunnery. He came highly recommended, and we met, and for me, there was a real chemistry, and I'm very grateful that he was willing to do this.
Well, tell me about
others.
Day one. You start your book off, and this is a devotional that, like you say, you can read as a book or you can read it day by day. But what happens on day one? Is that the day when you find out that something has happened to your animal and you have to make a decision? Or
yes, the first thing I do, Mary, is the very first thing is, I'm sorry. And the reason I say that is I want the person reading it, assuming they have lost a dog or a pet, is to let them know, listen, this is real. This is real grief. And the Bible says to mourn with those that mourn. Weep with those that weep. Trust the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. The Bible says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He cares for those that trust in Him. That's Psalm 34:18. So the first thing I do is I try to empathize with them, because I have been there. And I walk through different ways of experiencing grief, how to take one day at a time. and the fact that I had a dog, and I approached it from the very beginning. When I was about 7 years old, I had a dog named, so we had let me back up. We had these Chihuahuas, but I never had my dog. And I kept telling my parents, I want a dog of my own. So they got this terrier, and my granddaddy Overstreet, who was an architect in Jackson, thought he needed to be named Jabbo. I have no idea, Mary, where Granddaddy Overstreet came up with that, but there we had it. We had Jabbo. Jabbo was a girl, and so when it came time for Jabbo to have puppies, there was a man, Mr. Locke, that had a bulldog, and they were going to mate. So Jabbo went out there. Well, Jabbo got hit by a car, so they had to come tell me this. So I experienced that type of grief at a young age, and like you said, my dad had a Chihuahua. He told me about it, and in comes the Chihuahua.
Comes the dog.
Then they gave me another dog named Nicky.
Well, this is another. That's another whole component of telling children that the dog is going to go to heaven, or whatever you want to say.
Right.
However you want to put it. That's hard.
We've been walking through that, and I talk about that with Allie, my grandson Braven. My daughter had a dog, Allie, and they had to walk through that. So we've had to walk through that with Braven, who's 5.
Oh, yeah. And he or she? He? Yeah. Pretty name. So you talk about that. How do you tell a child? Because you talk about it in the book. Right.
Right. We talk about that, and we talk about, one of the things that we talk about is that God is love. That He is the ultimate example and source of love that loves us unconditionally, and that dogs are His creations. And they bring pleasure, especially if you're a dog person. They can bring pleasure. They can be a part of your family. But the way that Haley and Logan, her wonderful husband, approached it was that he is no longer, Allie is no longer here, and we believe, Logan, that one day we will probably see Allie in heaven. And I lean towards that. I can't say, Mary, for sure that's going to happen, but I talk about that theologically in the book too. I intertwine all of that along the way, and so that's the way they approached it. And she put a picture of Allie in there with some other family pictures, and so it's a gradual, day by day grief. Children will often ask a question just out of the blue, and they don't necessarily want a whole chapter on it. You just answer the question and you move on. Well, we got to move on to a break, and we're going to come back on the other side. We're going to talk more. I've got Dr. Hal Kitchings. That is you're not a physical doctor, not a medical doctor. Right. Divinity, doctor of divinity. And Joe Lee, who is the editor-in-chief of Dogwood Press and Sunrise Press. And we'll be back in just a few minutes on Mary Wieden and You. Everybody knows I don't know anything about music, but I think I know that one. Welcome back to Mary Wieden and You. We've got a very sober subject, though, but there are funny parts about it. I have got in the studio Dr. Hal Kitchings. He is a minister, and he also writes books. More than one book. He practices, or preaches, I should say the word would be, in Brookhaven. And then his publisher, Joe Lee, is here, editor-in-chief of Dogwood Press and Sunrise Press. And he's written this book. Hal's written this book called Doggone It Hurts. And we're talking about saying goodbye, but, there are good things. Well, again, I think it's a final act of love, that we can give to our dogs. And people, tell about grief, because we talked about this during the break, how some people are hesitant to express grief because over an animal. Well, oh, by the way, somebody texts in, good luck on the book. Very neat ideal. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know who that is?
That's good to hear.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Hal.
Yeah. So my first pastorate was in Middleburg, Florida, outside of Jacksonville. And I noticed, though I'd been a youth minister at Marson Heights and Daniel Memorial in Jackson, I had never been a senior pastor. And one of the things I noticed, Mary, was that when church members had a dog die, they were a little hesitant to tell me about it, though their heart was breaking. Aww. I can remember to this day, Lynn, a lady named Lynn, called me on the phone. She says, Pastor Hal, I don't know if I should tell you this, but so-and-so died, and she just started crying. I said, Lynn, listen, first of all, I'm a dog person, so we're good. I get it. And then I talked about how the Lord is the God of all comfort. And so we just kind of talked through that. And then there was another man, Mickey, like a year later, Mickey Ciavola. I still remember his name. He was a an officer for the police department, and they lost a dog. They didn't have any children, so they lost a dog, and they were grieving. And so for years, I've noticed that as a pastor, that people, like, should I tell him or should I not? And I try to immediately, Mary, put them at ease to say it is a real grief. It could be part of your family. Let's work through this. And so that's why I decided and really felt led to provide a tool that people can use, and hopefully it'll help.
So, Joe, how did you have to edit a lot on Hal's writing, or did he pretty well nail it, or how did the editing process go for you?
I did some touch-up work here and there, but the book was largely intact. Hal delivered exactly what he said he would, 30 essays that are more or less thematically linked, that walk you through the different stages. And again, they're very easy to read. It's not a textbook at all. It's very conversational. And the net effect, I think, from reading it, whether you do one day at a time for 30 days or read it all in an afternoon, is like you've had that conversation with him.
Wow.
You should walk away feeling comforted. And what y'all were talking about just a moment ago about being able to open up and say, we've lost a member of the family. This hurts. There's documentation from that from my family when my wife or I put something on social media about losing a beloved pet, and everybody talks and says, oh my gosh, we just had to put down our horse or our dog. So many, many more people are comfortable doing that than not. But Hal's right that there are a lot of people still who almost feel embarrassed about it. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about, because it is like losing a family member.
I do a lot of stuff on Twitter and Twitter X, and on Instagram. Twitter X, there's this one part, though. They got me lined up with a bunch of people. There's a lot of, here's my dog, he died today, and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, I can't read all that,
right.
All of it. But I do try to read that for people, because that's what they do. It's what I'll do eventually. I don't know when that'll be, but eventually I'll do that too. And on Instagram, a lot of passages of animals. But there's one dog, though. I mean, if you feel sad, there's a guy called Sergeant O'Reilly. He is a real life sergeant with Washington County in Oregon. It's near Portland, and so he has a dog named Radar O'Reilly. Radar is a 10-year-old Malinois, and each day people from all over the world send Sergeant O'Reilly a package of some junk to eat, whether it's dog food junk or people junk, so something to eat. And so Eamon O'Reilly, he opens the cage where his dog is. His dog travel. He is a chase and apprehension dog, but he's such a puppy in a lot of ways. Anyway, so the sergeant opens the thing, and the dog comes in, puts his head right on the guy's shoulder, and the guy opens the stuff, and they share a snack. It's the silliest thing in the world, but it will make you laugh, and it will make you happy. But I don't want to take away from the book. So tell about day 2. Let's do some of these days. And I also want to get with, you've also want to talk about a vet down there, but, kind of go through some of the poignant, well, every day is poignant, but what do you think? Day 2, it says, you're everywhere I look. Oh, dear, but the pain of your loss is everywhere, too. That's hard.
Yes. Day 2 is really what I referred to about my daughter Haley's dog, Allie, dying. So I walked through that in day 2 and things that we worked with Braven. There is a quote. Every day there is a quote. Sometimes there's a scripture, but it might be faith-based quote or something like this is on day 3, until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened.
You see, they got souls. These animals,
so there's a quote. There's a quote every day, and from different people and perspectives. One of the things that I also wrote about in here, and I believe it's day 26. Is about Blair.
Yeah.
And
let's see.
So let me see if it's day 26
and
or
you can get the book, by the way, at Lemuria. You can get it at where? Amazon? I presume, right, Joe?
Amazon coming here in the next week or 2. Right now, Lemuria Books in Jackson. Lorelei Books in Vicksburg, the Bookmart and Cafe in Starkville, and Impression Books in Flowood. and more to come.
You can. By the way, Flo has got a. Well, not Flo. Yeah, we do. Flo, we got a Barnes and Noble now.
Yep.
We've arrived.
Yes.
We're big. But so you're going to have copies of the book out at MC this afternoon, right?
That's
yes.
right.
Alumni Hall on the beautiful Mississippi College campus. We have cooked up a beautiful day for the signing. And 4 o'clock is when that starts. And then Thursday afternoon here in the Jackson Market at Lemuria at 5 o'clock.
I think this is going to be really a hot seller. I really do. Because,
Good.
I mean, this applies to just about all of us. You said day 26, though. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the exact one, but let me just tell you about it. And there's a picture with Blair and his owner Heather Smith on page 3 or 4, right before the blurbs of people endorsing the book. But basically, as I was writing this book, a family lost, they had a tragic accident with their son, Jacob, and he passed away. So I went to see them early that morning on Saturday. They have several children, precious family. And while I was there was this giant poodle. Just giant
standard,
poodle.
standard. They're like,
yeah, he's big, named Blair. And so, Mary, as we were talking through things, I noticed Blair going from person to person. It was almost like he was an untrained therapy dog.
Yes.
And so I talk about that in the book. And then when we were praying, and I think all of us had tears because it was so tragic. I can't imagine the pain of losing a child, by the way. That's got to be the
worst.
ultimate, the worst. And so as I had tears rolling down my eyes, all of a sudden I felt this Blair was licking my tears. So I write about that as well as theological perspectives, working through grief, and then personal stories that I've had as a pastor, as well as quoting and sharing things from other people like Tebow and Billy Graham.
By the way, I have to share this. I had forgotten to mention this at the top of the show. A law enforcement officer by the name of Chris Piku, or PQ, people say, but I think it's Piku is how I heard it, has passed away. And he has, I've never had him on the show. I tried to get him a time or two, and he moved around from different sheriff's departments in the area. Very well respected dog trainer. And I think he trained them to be, search and et cetera, search and apprehend and things like that. And I was always so curious, I still am, to know how that's done, and how you pick a dog that does that. That's another whole thing. But he's passed away, and I'm sure that people in the law enforcement community and the dog community are grieving his loss, too, as well.
Yes.
I don't know how many dogs he had, but anyway. Go ahead. Tell some more things about what we should do. What do we do? Like here, have you allowed yourself time to grieve, and do you think you are forever leaving your other dog? That's interesting. If people have two dogs, is that what
Right. Yeah, that's some things we walk through, some questions to ask as they're trying to consider what to do next. Have you allowed yourself time to grieve? I tell you, Mary, grief, everybody grieves differently. And it depends on the person, their season of life, their faith, how close they were to the person. And for example, I've had loved ones die, and for my mother, it was several years later. All of a sudden, I was in a moment, and it just poured out. It just hit me.
Yes.
So that's the thing, that it takes time to grieve, whether it's a person or a dog. And so one of the things you ask yourself, have you allowed yourself time to grieve? Do you think you're forever leaving your other dog if you buy another dog? So this is the chapter that works through day 26. Is it time? Have you gained support from your family? Does having a dog fit your season of life? Have you done research on the type of dog? Do you realize what faith it is when it comes to getting another dog? I mean, there's just some practical things in helping you work through when to get another dog. That's what that particular chapter deals with.
Do you and your church have a blessing of the animals ceremony?
We have not done that. No. Now I shared.
Cool thing. I haven't done it in years. This my girl right now. She's never been blessed. Darn it.
Right.
But that's a neat thing that people do.
Well, I was mentioning earlier, we have in February Night to Shine, which is for special needs in South Mississippi. It's last year was the first time we've done it. We've got some wonderful leaders in our church and our community that put this on, where we had, I think there was like 85 special needs dogs anywhere from age 16, 17 on up. We had one in her 80s that was there. And we had a service dog. Canines for Christ brought a service dog.
Oh.
And one of the places that they could visit during the night is they could go pet the service dog and spend some time with them.
That's nice.
And that's a type of ministry.
Well,
Sure
it is. Absolutely. Yeah. Joe, I think you need to do more, publish more books about animals. I mean, this is just a whole fascinating world, isn't it? You know.
I can point you to a really neat video of the dog Blair, the extra large poodle, like three square feet in all directions. Yes. This is a big dog. And on the Dogwood Press Facebook page, there is a video of Hal talking about Blair with Blair in his arms. This was really impressive. Mr. One-Hit Wonder here, one-take wonder, getting the entire video done and expressing what tied into a very nice message about the dog and the loss to the family, while wrestling with this dog who was trying to jump out of his arms. And this was done in one take, and I was truly impressed.
Wow. Dogwoodpress.com?
Yes, that's the website, dogwoodpress.com, and the Facebook page where you can view that video is Dogwood Press.
All right, guys, listen, thank you both very much for being here. It's 4 o'clock this afternoon, Alumni Hall at MC. I don't even have to look at my notes to know that one. Well, good luck with this book,
Thank you,
Hal.
Thank
this
you
is
so
absolutely
much.
wonderful.
So much.
Thank you both for coming. So there's a little bit of tears, but this affects so many of us. It's called Doggone It Hurts, and it does, but this will be worth it. And so we're going to come back and do a little bit about, that little thing we had last week called the election. Stay with us.
He will always be my friend. Well, he starts in the middle.
Wow, that was great stuff. Book again, it's called Doggone It Hurts. It's by Hal Kitchings, and you can see him and get a copy of the book this afternoon at 4 o'clock at MC, the Alumni Hall. He's signing books. He's a native Clintonian. He's a pastor down in Brookhaven, and I think this book is going to be a big hit. But I want to talk about now the election is over with. Now you got to get down to the nitty-gritty stuff. Now you got to get down to the hard stuff and name your picks. I was surprised that, and I like the picks, know most of those people because I've seen them around. He has President-elect. What's so weird? He was a president-elect, then he was a president, then he was a former president, now he's a president-elect. Trump has named he's naming South Carolina Governor Kristi Noem Secretary of Homeland Security. She lost a lot of favor with a lot of people a couple of years ago, I guess it was. She's been governor of South Dakota when she talked about putting this dog down that was just a terrible dog, untrainable. And she got so frustrated with it, she thought the only thing and the best thing to do would be to put the dog down. And so she did. And a lot of people were like, no, you don't do that. And, don't do that. You find a place for the dog. And I don't know, I've just been kind of cool toward her ever since then. I think that was really bad judgment. And I think she kind of doesn't appreciate her fact that, that she did that herself. But anyway, she's been named to be Homeland Security, and it doesn't say where I read this, but that's where the Secret Service is, isn't it? Yes, under Homeland Security. So look for some changes there. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Of course, we know Susie. What's her name? Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. I'd never heard of her before, but the president called her up. Some point, and who's he talking about? Susie. This was last week, I think, before the election. But anyway, she's chief of staff. Mike Waltz, he's a U.S. congressman. He's named to National Security Advisor. Tom Homan is the border czar. Now, that's a new position. Tom Homan has been on, I don't know about if he's on the other networks, but he's been on Fox an awful lot. He was the acting, I believe, chief of the Border Patrol at one time. And he has just been really very vociferously talkative about what to do with these illegals and all this stuff. And so he gets to put his money where his mouth is. He'll get to do that. And this is a position that does not have to be approved by by Congress, by the Senate, which is good because those hearings are going to be something else. But anyway, so borders are. Elise Stefanik, who Trump has mispronounced her name all the time. She's the UN ambassador. I can't remember how he said his name, Stefanik or something. He didn't say her name right, but at least Stefanik, I've heard of her, UN ambassador. Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, I've seen him around. Lee Zeldin, this is interesting, he'll head up the EPA. Lee Zeldin has been a congressman, and he ran for governor of New York State. Came very close, but Kathy Hochul won it, I think, both times. I'm thrilled that Marco Rubio is appointed going to be Secretary of State. How perfect is that? It's so funny because if you go back to the first, you have to go back to 9 years ago, 9 years ago. Marco Rubio was running for president as well when Trump started his odyssey back many years ago, and he called him Little Marco and all this kind of stuff, and he just didn't have anything good to say about him. But over the course of time, they have figuratively kissed and made up and become great pals and have respect for one another. And Marco Rubio would be, but they don't play those games of the first this, that, or the other thing, but he would be the first Hispanic, I guess, first Hispanic American Secretary of State. Well, okay, fine. But I think he'll be good at it. He's smart, he's articulate, he's erudite, and he's all those things. And, he understands different peoples and different ways of thinking and all that sort of stuff. And I think, that's a good pick there. Governor Burgum, Burgum kind of got slept off into the hinterlands during the presidential race. But I thought he was a pretty smart guy. He's from someplace out west. He's the governor, maybe North Dakota, I guess it is. North Dakota, maybe the governor out there. And he is being picked as Secretary of Energy, and he has been a businessman and worked in the industry. And he has raised a lot of animals, too. He would have been good for ag. But by the way, what about ag? Haven't seen anything about that. So Governor Burgum would be Secretary of Energy. That's a good choice. Kristi Noem, again, Homeland Security. I haven't seen anything about agriculture. Have you seen anything like that? Lance, you come across any of those other...
Nothing definitive. The things
names?
the names that we had, Cindy Hyde-Smith and others that are in that group, but I haven't heard anything definitive to know one way or the other which way he's going to go. So.
Have you heard of other people other than what I have here?
No.
These are pretty much the ones. They're good picks. Do you think they're good picks?
Yeah, definitely. We got to get everybody settled in, and hopefully Congress will work together. And now that you have the mandate of the people have spoken, and
didn't we people speak all over the country?
I think it beats. If you go through the cabinet of Joe Biden the last 4 years, I think every one of them was a DEI hire. So I'm looking forward to getting back to meritocracy. And again, I have no problem with black or women or whoever or whatever, but being qualified for the job, taking that oath to do the job, and ensuring to the American people that you are going to do this job and be held accountable, that's what I care about. I think that's what he's doing, is appointing people that are going to be accountable.
I think that this whole Biden administration has just been a phony pick, like you said, a bunch of DEI people. I think that we have been run by a cabal all along. I think that was the plan from the beginning to get him elected and tell him and her, hey, don't worry about anything. We'll tell you what to do. We'll take care of everything. And isn't that how it's been? That's exactly how it's been. We'll take care of everything, except they haven't taken care of everything. And they've gotten us into some horrible messes that we're going to have to now get out of. But so I think, let's see. I
always like Doug Burgum, though. And,
he's sharp. Have you ever heard of him? Had you ever heard of him before?
I followed him a great bit over the last year.
You heard?
He was such a strong businessman, governor, a guy that has been in the energy world, knows the dealing with resources, strip mining, and the dirtiness of that industry. And, if you're coming from a place like North Dakota, that's pristine. It's beautiful. And there's huge energy boom going on up there. So somebody like that has his finger on the pulse. Yeah, sharp. He's sharp. Very sharp. Very eloquent in the way he speaks. Mm-hmm. And, a sharp guy. So I was happy that that's being considered. I liked him a lot.
That's a good position, too. Getting it away from that stupid ex-governor, the mole, as they used to call her, from Michigan. You know why they called her the mole? The governor, it's Grantham.
Grantham, yeah.
You know why they called her the mole?
Granholm or whatever.
Granholm, that's it, Granholm. You know why they called her the mole? She used to have this giant mole on her face. It was not unattractive. It was just that your eyes just went to it. But anyway, so she got called the mole. Somebody says from Madison County, what do they say? Madison County Business League and Foundation, they go, hoping AG is Cindy Hyde-Smith.
I've heard that will be a strong consideration. It's very competitive, I'm sure. So,
and I didn't realize she's friends with Trump.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, that was amazing to me. So Trump is going down, I think, on Thursday. He's going up. It would be up to the White House to meet with what's his name, Biden.
Yeah, and wifey's not coming.
But you know why?
Like, I don't think I need to make this.
If I were she, and she talks like this anyway.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Oh yes. And by the way, one time, did I say this before? One time she was to say the Our Father, and it was some large group, and it was televised all over the world. And she speaks about 5 or 7 languages, and she read the Our Father, and some snark from one of the media people. They're so irrelevant. She's like, she had to read the Our Father. Well, yes, if you speak all those languages and you're kind and nervous and you're in front of the whole world, it might be wise to do that. You don't want to slip off into another language, while you're at the time. But if I were Melania, I would have to say to Dr. Jill Biden, I would have to say something like, you don't have to leave the material left over from the curtains that you made those dresses from. Honestly, or you don't have to leave the tablecloth material. Those dresses that
you would troll her a little bit, is what you're saying.
Well,
I
mean,
with her,
geez, the outfits that woman has had, she's, bless her heart, terribly tacky. Mrs. Biden is the most tacky woman in the world. And
they had, back in the old days, they called those folks carpetbaggers because they'd wear, they'd bring these very, ugly bags down from the north, and they were just, that's what they looked like out of those dresses.
Well, her dresses looked like they were a tablecloth last week.
A tablecloth or a curtain.
Yes, matching tablecloth and curtain. Honestly, I haven't noticed her. I don't pay attention to those people. I can't be bothered with them. I didn't learn diddly about. It's a good thing because it wasn't anything to learn about Kamala because I knew she wasn't going to last. I knew she wasn't going to make it. So why learn a whole lot of stuff about somebody that you don't have to be bothered with?
You learned one very important thing is that she knows how to blow through $1 billion and have the worst turnout you could possibly have in 36 years. But you blew $1 billion to do that,
and she's looking for money.
Yeah, and still needs money.
Yeah, still needs money. But well, if you wouldn't pay Oprah Winfrey $1 million.
Now Oprah's saying, "Well, I didn't take $1 million.
Yeah, right.
I was working out, and this. I mean, it's."
It's so funny, and all these these stars, they could give a damn less about who's running for what. Just how much does it pay, and how many songs do I have to do? Mm-hmm. Oh, I have to do another song. All right, put another $500,000 for that song. I mean, honestly, that was awful, awful, awful. And I'm proud that the people of America saw through it. Well, we all suffered through it, but, they saw through this whole thing. And that was that.
Well, manipulation. Hopefully people wake up and decide, hey, I don't have to be formed into one thing. I can have independent thought. I don't have to be told how to think and a finger pointed at me. Step back and make your own decisions based on what's best for yourself, your family, and this country and the people you're around. Just don't listen to everybody tell you what to do. Just go make a decision.
Oh, who would be a good press secretary, White House press secretary? Would it be?
Well, bring back Jen Psaki. I'd love to see her run it while he's.
Jen. I call her Psaki. It's Psaki, but I call her Psaki.
No, that was a joke. Do not bring her back.
No,
please.
no. I'm wondering if it's going to be. A lot of people think, it's going to be Megyn Kelly. Who knows?
Could be. Yeah,
Don't know. But
that would be interesting.
That would be very interesting because then I'll go through the whole history, blah blah blah, of her. But anyway, well, that was a good show. I enjoyed our pastor, and I enjoyed Joe Lee. And doggone it hurts, 4:00 over at MC. I just hope that this is a bestseller. I think it's really going to be a hot deal because we all need that sort of help. All right, everybody. See you on Friday. This went by fast, as they always do. Have a good one.